This lesson is about writing equations of lines again in slope-intercept form, but now we're going to be focusing on writing a line, the equation of a line that is perpendicular to a given line. So what does perpendicular lines mean? Well, many of us know that perpendicular lines are two lines that intersect and form right angles, okay? But we need to look more specifically at certain details in order to figure out if the lines are perpendicular to each other. Geometrically, we have this theory that says that two non-vertical lines are perpendicular if the product of their slopes is -1. So what is that telling me? That tells me if I take a given slope and I multiply that times a perpendicular slope, I should get -1. Now, most people like to use this kind of shortcut, if you will, that says that we know that perpendicular slopes are the opposite reciprocal of a given slope. All right? So in other words, if I have a slope of 3, then the perpendicular slope would be -1/3. I take the positive, change it to its opposite, negative. I take 3, or 3 over 1, and flip the fraction, -1/3. So if I have a slope of -2/5, then the perpendicular slope would be negative becomes a positive, 2 over 5, flip it over, and you get 5 over 2. All right? So we're going to need to use that. Writing equations of perpendiculars, just like writing equations of all other kinds of lines, with the one exception, and that one exception is this idea of slope. All right? So, how do we do it? We're going to do it basically the exact same way. Here we go. You ready? We're going to jump right in. First thing, I notice that in this given equation, I have a slope of 1/2. All right? From that information, I need the perpendicular slope. They want me to write the equation of a line that is perpendicular to this given line. All right, so if the slope was 1/2, perpendicular is the opposite, so it's going to be negative. Reciprocal, take 1 over 2 and flip it, that would be 2 over 1, or -2. There's my new slope that I need to use to write the equation of this line. I use the given point, which is -1, 2, and from here I write the equation of the line. Y minus 2 equals -2 times x minus -1, which would be x plus 1. Now they specifically want this equation in slope-intercept form, so I got to change it from point slope to slope-intercept. Y minus 2 equals distributing -2x minus 2, and then I'm going to add 2 to both sides, and I have y equals -2x plus 0, or I can just leave it as y equals -2x. All right, let's take a look at this next one. So on this next one, we have a slope of -3/4. I know that the perpendicular slope of -3/4 would be positive 4/3. Negative became a positive, 3/4 reciprocal is 4/3. I need to use that with this point, -2, 3. Okay, point slope, y minus 3 equals 4/3 times x minus -2, which would be x plus 2. Distribute, y minus 3 equals 4/3 x plus 4/3 times 2 would be 8/3. Add 3, which means I need to add some thirds. 3 is 9/3. That gives me y equals 4/3 x plus 17/3. There's the equation of the line in slope-intercept form. Now again, notice, if the slope that they gave us was -3/4, and this new slope that I found was 4/3, this is what that rule says. If you took -3/4 times positive 4/3, what does that give you? It should give you -1. Well, let's see. Top times top is -12. Bottom times bottom is 12. -12 divided by 12 is -1. I know that my slopes indicate that I have perpendicular lines. All right, just a couple more examples here. In this equation, they don't tell us the slope. So once again, we have to find the slope. So on this equation, I'm going to get y by itself. So I have 3y equals, move that to x, negative 2x plus 4. Divide everything by 3. I get y is negative 2/3 x plus 4/3. I need this slope. But now I need to think of what is the perpendicular. The perpendicular slope will be positive 3/2, and it has to pass through the point 2, 3. Point slope, y minus 3 equals 3/2 times x minus 2. Distribute, y minus 3 equals 3/2 x minus 6/2, which would be just 3. Add 3 to both sides. And I have y equals 3/2 x plus 0, so I can just leave it as 3/2 x. One more equation. I cannot write the equation on the line until I turn this into a form where I can identify the slope. So I got to solve for y to get it in the slope intercept. Negative 4y equals negative 3x minus 2. I subtracted 3x to move it across. Divide everything by negative 4. That gives me positive 3/4 x plus 2/4, or 1/2. But remember, that's my key. I want to figure out what the slope is. If the slope of the given line is 3/4, then the perpendicular slope has to be negative 4/3. And then we know it has to go through, they want us to put it through this point 3/6. All right, so from this information, point slope, y minus 6 equals negative 4/3 times x minus 3. Distribute, y minus 6 equals negative 4/3 x plus 12/3. 12/3 would really just be 4. Negative times negative is positive. 4 times 3 is 12. Divided by 3 is 4. Add 6 to both sides, which leaves me the slope-intercept form of y equals negative 4/3 x plus 10. All right, what I'd like you to do now is worksheet 215, writing equations of perpendicular lines. Let me know if you have any questions.